So, sometimes I just show up and I see if there's something to share. Sometimes I have an idea already. I've got a few different ideas sort of floating around. Um, and I always have this feeling like I want to just share silence, share the depths. And, but man, there's a lot of vanity, insecurity. it's, it's been an interesting experiment recording videos, I'll say that. It's like wanting to get, sometimes it's difficult to disentangle motives, How pure are my motives? How pure, how sincere? And also, the question of who am I to share? Who am I to and everything is so metric driven nowadays. It's like I've got this app on my phone that has the steps, like a step counter, pedometer, is that what it's called? Keeps track of your steps, your mileage. YouTube has its analytics, its breakdown. There's all these little feedback loops that can be they can be addictive. They can be they can be very addictive. The delivery apps, DoorDash, Uber Eats, like your customer rating, your acceptance rate, it's like the pellets that they give mice or hamsters or gerbils for performing certain tasks. It's like all these little pellets that you can get, and it's so hard not to buy into that, to feed into that. It's nice to see a thumbs up. It's nice to get a nice comment. It's nice to, but then, just like it's that inflation, deflation cycle. That is so brutal, because then the negative side of that is the thumbs down is the negative comment, is the customer dissatisfaction, is the I'm not getting as many miles today as I did yesterday. My mind just went completely blank. Yeah, and then it's like, man, then you can be kind of in reaction to that. It's like you can be aware of that cycle of inflation and deflation. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a softer way to look at all that too. It's like we're socially referencing beings. And feedback is not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, and I guess you can just become too aloof. You can get into this space of being so aloof from any it's like you can say I'm just not even going to enter into that game of approval or disapproval, and there's wisdom in that for sure. It's like the more you heal, the less of a hit energetically you take one way or the other. But you can also sort of prematurely get very aloof about it all and just say, I'm not even going to play the game. And that could be a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of a pitfall. Yeah, it can be a little bit of a pretense or a little bit artificial, because you do have a human psychology, you do have, susceptibility, vulnerability. It's almost like you kind of have to go through the inflation, deflation a certain amount of times. You have to struggle with it. Unfortunately, it's like you have to go through the ups and downs and use the downs to figure out, where is that hitting inside of me? Where is that deficiency? Where is that insecurity? And to sort of search your awareness, search your consciousness, search your being, your body, and find those residues or find those residues and work to transform, heal, release. Yeah, it's hard to really make definitive statements about many things, but about this, because it's like you can see it from so many different vantage points. The utility of feedback on some level, the destructive nature of all these feedback loops and all this. Certainly with social media, certainly with, just kind of this data-driven approach to output, and it's sort of easy to lose your humanity and all of that, and it can really kind of map onto, in a destructive way, in an unhealthy way, to one's perfectionistic tendencies. And that can, be very dissatisfying. Yeah, so I guess you just do your best to be sincere, to be honest, to see the patterns, to see your helplessness on some level. I don't want to state that too strongly, but that we're susceptible as human beings. We're not these robots. We're not these perfected beings. We're, for good and ill, we're these we're kind of these vulnerable, fragile little creatures on some level. And so you can be tender with yourself about that. You can watch yourself get lost and say, well, that's... And I just hear Ram Dass's voice so often when I'm speaking, because I listen to so much. It's not for many years, but when I was younger, I just listened to so many things, and it's like I can hear him saying, using the word poignant, like you just kind of see your predicament, and you say, how poignant is that? And I am not perfect, boy, very imperfect. That's part of the struggle with sharing, is like, I don't have it all figured out. My life's a mess. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of just full stop right there. At the same time, though, it's like you live enough time here on this planet. You dedicate yourself, you're sincere about healing and about God and the path. It's not like that gives you authority or power or anything like that, but it's just like you have experiences and you can share. And then, there's always this worry, is like, am I sharing beyond what I've realized? Yes, sometimes. Well, maybe, I don't know. The mind can it's like the mind can co-opt anything you value. That's one thing that OCD forums and people who really struggle with OCD and have found some insight about the pattern, I think really do a good job of sharing, is this idea, and it's really sort of heightened or amplified with that pattern that we call OCD, is how the mind sort of just latches onto your values. So if you value non-harming, ahimsa, if you value not hurting people or something like that, then an OCD pattern can be just this fear, this really dysfunctional, paralyzing fear of And it can show up in a variety of different ways that you've harmed somebody. You know, people have it where they are driving and their mind tells them that they ran somebody over, or they're not sure, did I just run somebody over? And it just completely out of the blue, but it becomes so overwhelming that they'll drive around and really scan the scene. Okay, I didn't run anybody over. I don't see any blood. I don't see anything on the car. I don't see anything on the road. They'll drive off. And then it's like, well, there was that bush in that area kind of just to the side. That, did you really check that? And so they drive back and check, and it's just this utterly awful, brutal way to exist. But you can see how it latches onto things that they value. Honesty, you know, if you value being an honest person, and that's one for me. It's like, was I fully honest? Was I 100% honest? I was lying there, wasn't I? Or 4 years ago, 10 years ago, I didn't fully tell the truth. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Do I need to call them up and apologize? Do I need to let this person know just exhaustively every detail about what I was thinking, how I was doing it? And it's so fucked up. It is such a nightmare. Oh man, it is so brutal. And part of that pattern is seeking relief. It's like, I value honesty. Now I feel, because I have that as such a core value, and now I've got this sense of that wasn't totally honest. Now there's a conflict, an inner conflict of values, and so it creates this dissonance, this incongruity, inner incongruity. And that's like an intolerable place to be. And so that's the obsessive part. It's like, shit, I can't tell, was that totally honest? Or did I harm somebody? Or did I totally wash my hands? Did I get all the dirt off of my hands? Did I totally balance out this certain pattern? Whatever the thing is. And so you have this like you have this obsessive thing trying to figure out, did I do that? Didn't I do that? And that's the obsession, that's the O of the OCD. And the compulsion comes in as a life raft and says, do this and you will get relief from this doubt, from this rumination, from these obsessions, from this inner turmoil, this incongruity. This will bring you back into alignment, right? If you confess, if it's, that can have a shade of that honesty, scrupulosity kind of thing with OCD. Confessing, if you go over the details 1,000 times in your mind and figure out exactly, you get all your motivations parsed out. Yeah, and so the compulsion comes in, wash your hands again, or drive around and check the road again, or confess again, or whatever the compulsion is. And it works. Briefly, sometimes. Briefly you can get relief. That's why, as I've tried to say in other videos, I sort of slot it into the category of addiction because it shares so many dynamics and features of addiction, and that addictive cycle of needing a drink, the hedonic treadmill, you could say, needing to get a hit of this or that. It's kind of the compulsive relief that brings you back into alignment. But it's temporary, and it is superficial because it doesn't address the deeper underlying insecurities, the fears, the pain, the unprocessed wounds. But yeah, that stuff comes up. making these videos, 'cause it's like I want to be honest. My mind's kind of trying to triage what might be useful here. Yeah, and so sometimes you just share. You may not feel perfectly aligned. It may not be coming from quote unquote the deepest. Your motives may be mixed. Yeah, it can be paralyzing being a thoughtful person, being a self-aware, what's a good word for it? Conscientious. It can be paralyzing because you can see all the different possibilities and you can really just kind of spin. So part of this for me is just saying, well, I'm just gonna make a video sometimes. And I don't know that I'm sharing perfectly honestly, perfectly in congruence with, perfectly in alignment, or speaking the full truth. I mean, you can, speaking the full truth, I mean, yeah, it's just like perfection isn't possible. So, yeah, so hopefully you see something human here. Something very human. I think a silence is really golden, but I can also, part of me thinks, that's just not very interesting to watch all the time. So yeah, we just do our best. We just do our best, really. There's a thought that I have. Well, I'm going to leave it at that, actually. Peace.